Snow mold is one of the most important diseases for the northern part of the United States and Canada. It can occur both with and without snow cover. Why are these guys laughing? Well, the reason is because it's not their green. If it was their green, they'd be crying, okay? What we're looking at here is where we had fungicide failure. This is the distributor who sold the product. This is the chemical company that made the product, and this is my right-hand man, Ron. Back when we had mercury fungicides, life was simple. We put the mercury fungicide down, and it controlled all of the snow mold pathogens. Since the mercury's disappeared, we started to use other fungicides, some of which controlled one snow mold and not another species of snow mold. In this particular case, this product controlled the gray snow mold, but it did not control the pink snow mold, and it clearly said that on the label. Fortunately, the superintendent used it anyway and had failure, obviously. The one snow mold is called microdochium patch, caused by Microdochium navale, and it attacks many, many species, but annual bluegrass tends to be the most susceptible to this particular pathogen. This is under the heading of life is cruel, okay? Whenever you have fungicide failure, it's always right in front of the clubhouse. So they not only have problems when they play golf, but they can get indigestion while they're eating dinner. This took me most of my career to get this fungus to grow into the shape of the state of Michigan. And if I can just get it to grow the Upper Peninsula up here, I'm going to retire. It's a pretty fungus, if you notice how the pretty pink color here. But it can be very devastating. As you can see, it can kill a lot of turf. It also occurs without snow cover. More of the time, it tends to have a copper color to it, but in this particular case, it didn't. Now, I had a call from a superintendent, and he said, I have yellow rings on my green. Well, this doesn't look like a yellow ring to me. It looks like a patch, but to him, it looked like a yellow ring. That's why it's difficult to identify things over the phone, okay? And I said, is it just the outer ring that's yellow? And he said, yeah, just the outer ring. So I thought maybe he had superficial fairing, and I told him to go put some iron sulfate on. It would mask the color, and everything would look better. But somehow or other, I envisioned he was going to put the iron sulfate in his spray tank, and he was going to calibrate it, and then he was going to go out and spray the green. But instead, he decided to just go from spot to spot to spot to spot, and he actually made it worse. So first of all, I misidentified the disease because it was microdochium patch, and second of all, I was not specific enough with my directions. I'm sure you guys never have those problems with your crew. Now, this is a green in England, and one thing you have to understand about people in England take care of golf courses, first of all, and don't call themselves golf course superintendents, they call themselves greenkeepers. Okay, and I walked upon this green, and you could see how much microdochium patch is there. And I said to him, what are you doing about this? And he said, nothing. And I said, well, what does the membership say? He says, who the bloody hell cares? Okay, well, maybe over there you don't have to care, but over here you better care. And if the greens start looking like this, you may be in the unemployment line. Now, more typically, when it occurs without snow cover, we tend to have these little copper-colored spots. I've heard this called red leaf spot. I've heard it called copper spot. Red leaf spot would be a general thinning of the turf. Copper spot is a disease of velvet bentgrass that occurs when the temperatures are in the 80s. Okay, so when temperatures are in the 60s, and you see this is microdochium patch without snow cover. We want to avoid fertility that leads to lush growth, okay, because this disease is more severe when we have lush growth. And you can see many, many products to control it, including Insignia and Trinity. You will notice there is no PCNB there because when this disease occurs without snow cover, you really don't want to be using PCNB. You want to try to control it with these fungicides and save the PCNB for the one application when you're going just prior to permanent snow cover, because excess applications of PCNB can injure the turf. The other one is called Tifula blight, or sometimes gray snow mold, and there are two pathogens responsible for it. One is Tifula incarnata, and the other is Tifula ishikariensis. And unlike the microdocium patch, this only occurs under snow cover. This is what I call a classic slide. You can see how nice and green the turf is where the superintendent sprayed the chemical. You can see why you need complete coverage, because as he dripped the nozzle coming off the green, there's no snow mold there, but it's certainly everywhere else. We talked about annual bluegrass being the most susceptible to microdocium patch. Well, creeping bentgrass is one of the most susceptible grasses to tifula blight, and you can see how much of the fairway has been effective. And then over here we have Kentucky bluegrass, which is relatively resistant, and you notice there's no snow mold or very little snow mold in it. It's called gray snow mold. I think you can see why it's called gray snow mold. Notice the gray coloration. If you get out there right after snow melt, you could see all the mycelium and the fungus, kind of like having a petri plate in the lab, only it's out in the field. And I told you there are two different tifula involved in this. Here we can see the Ishikariensis, which tends to be more of a reddish brown in color, and then the Incarnata, which tends to produce straw-colored patches. Another way of identifying them is looking for the fruiting bodies, which are called sclerotia. They're tiny and they're black, look like maybe somebody sprinkled pepper on the spot. They're never as wide as the blade of grass. I know they look brown here, that's because they're under a microscope, but to the naked eye, they are black in color. And then the other one, the Incarnata, produces these large copper-colored sclerotia, which are usually always wider than the blade of grass. As the spring goes on, they shrink down to about the size of a grain of salt, and when they're in that condition, no matter how much fungicide you put on them, you cannot have an effect on them. When the cool weather of the fall arrives, these sclerotia swell again, and they produce these pretty pink fruiting bodies. If we take a close-up look at these pink fruity bodies, they're called basidiocarps, and then on the tops of these, basidiospores are produced, and the wind carries them back to the area that you may have sprayed the season before.